Okay, come on, let's do this. Ready to go. There's yesterday's painting. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Markowsky. Welcome to my studio. Today we are going to recreate another one of my all-time very favorite paintings. Today is day 2 of our Pablo Picasso week. Yesterday we began by painting The Old Guitarist, which is one of Picasso's most famous early paintings. He painted this painting I think when he was about 22 years old. We're going to go back a little bit further to when he was 20 years old, and we are going to paint this painting, Child with a Dove. It's a small girl holding a dove, and many people consider this the first painting of Picasso's blue period. So, of course, this arguably might be the most famous painting from the blue period. He did a number of great paintings during that short period of time, just roughly about 3 years. But many people believe this is the very first one that set off that entire blue period style. And we kind of covered it a little bit yesterday. We'll touch on a few of those same things and then move into a few different things that we did not talk about. So before we launch right into the painting, I want to let you know that there is a free downloadable outline which you can use to transfer the image onto your canvas. I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. Or you could just print it out and color it. You could use it as give it to your children to color while you make the painting, or they could make the painting while you color in on the outline. So let's just take a look here. I'll show you how to transfer this image. There is a free Dropbox folder in the description down there below, and you'll see all of these subfolders. These are all paintings that we've already done. We've painted the Mona Lisa, George O'Keeffe's flowers, other famous things. You can see Star Wars, Batman. So we're not just focusing on so-called high fine art, but we're also looking at pop culture. There's we have Sheldon Cohen's The Hockey Sweater. If you're Canadian, I'm sure you've heard it. Superman, Peppa Pig, Spider-Man's in there. What else? We did another Pablo Picasso painting, two actually, of the Dove of Peace that he did. I mean, there's a ton of different work, all sorts of different styles from people from all over the world as well. So not just white European men, but women, people from every culture possible, or at least that's the goal. I'm slowly going around the world. We've been to many of the great countries: China, Japan, India, Canada, United States, of course, Australia. But let's continue. Where are we? These are other ones that are on their way to come as well, just FYI. So if you look in the folder, what was it, 80 to 84 here, Picasso, you're going to see 6 images. Well, there's a lot more than 6 images, but if we click on here, this is the painting we're about to do, number 2, Child with a Dove, and you'll see the original painting as well as the outline. I'll also just let you know really quickly that there's a free, maybe not every, depending on how you think about it, Facebook isn't free, but there is a private Facebook page for people that are painting along with me, and a great community of super supportive artists just like yourself at different points in their creative journey. I strongly encourage you to join this group, get great feedback, support from other artists, people that are at the very beginning of learning how to paint, and people who've been painting with me for over a year now, who've really got a really strong foundation and are now making their own paintings. Some of them join me from time to time to paint along with me, but I think it's just a great group. If you were looking for some support as a beginner artist, you can't go wrong here. And I love all of this. Like, look how everyone's just making such awesome stuff here. This is Maria, who did the Arcambaldo painting we did few weeks ago. I thought this was pretty funny. Right? There's a little good humor in here, right? So let's just take a quick look at Picasso's biography. Yesterday we dived a little bit into his early life and his relationship with his father. So again, born 1881, died in 1973. I think it's interesting for those of us in Canada to understand that he is roughly the same age as Tom Thompson and other members of the Group of Seven. So if you're thinking like, oh, like, how, I wonder what else was happening during this period of time. Tom Thompson was born in 1883, I think. So, you know, they actually look very similar, especially when they were young. So let's, we want to go down to the blue period because that's where we begin today's episode. We talked a little bit about the death of his best friend and how that suicide propelled Pablo Picasso into the blue period. And he begins using blue as a kind of an association with this gloomy poverty, loneliness, isolation, all of which were themes that people weren't particularly interested in who were buying his work at the time. So as he's making more and more of these paintings of homeless people in Paris and Barcelona and prostitutes, you could imagine his gallery owner, the director who was selling his paintings in Paris, Ambroise Villard, was like, I'm not going to be able to sell any of this work. Lo and behold, we'll talk about how much this painting sold. Today's painting sold for around $75 million just a few years ago. So maybe some of those people who turned down the opportunity to buy some of these early Picasso paintings are rolling in their graves right now. Let's just take a quick look. Here's the Wikipedia. All these links are in the description below as well, by the way. We have Child with a Dove, today's painting. Maybe it's just worth mentioning. So this painting was on display at the National Gallery of England in London for 4 decades, from the late 70s until just a few years ago. And it was on a long-term loan, and as a long-term loan, they have their own right. They own the painting, so the people that owned it decided to sell it, and they sold it to an investor in Qatar, the Qatari Museum Group, I think it was called, for 50 million pounds, which is about $70 million American, about $5 billion Canadian. With the exchange rate, you never know. We'll get into the painting itself as we go here. I just thought a few more links just to give a little bit of context for today's painting. We talked yesterday about Picasso's complicated relationship with his father. His father was a very accomplished artist himself. What we're looking at here on the screen is a painting by his father, Jose Ruiz, and you could see his father specialized in painting birds and other animals, and many people say that this painting, Child with a Dove, that we're about to do, the inclusion of a dove is a bit of a homage to his father. Up to you to decide. I don't know. We'll probably never know. I think it's also just worth here just taking a quick little browse at some of Picasso's other famous work. You can see this one is sort of suggested to be his first famous work. There is a few others that are also very well known. We're going to be painting, we painted the old guitarist yesterday. We're going to be painting Les Mademoiselles d'Avignon in the new year, because we're going to be looking at some of the most expensive paintings of all time, and that is one of them. We're going to be painting Guernica in the new year as well, although we will be painting an image that was created during the process of creating Guernica on Monday to celebrate the birthday of Pablo Picasso. That's why we're working our way up to Pablo's birthday on Monday, October 25th. So, you know, I think a lot of people are very familiar with Picasso's a cubist work, and of course we're going to get there. Maybe it's worth just punching in here and saying on Thursday this is the painting we're going to do. This is part of what's called his rose period. It's the period immediately following the blue period. Here's another painting. I did do an outline for this, and this is in the Dropbox if you want to do this painting. I'm not going to do it, but it is. I really like this painting a lot, and we will talk about it on Thursday as well. On Saturday, we're going to be doing this painting here, The Guitar Players. This is where Picasso's right in the thick of the Cubist period. And then, as I said, here's the Weeping Woman we'll be doing on Picasso's actual birthday on Monday. So let's get to the tracing, and we're going to start making today's painting. Let's put yesterday's right up there overlooking us. So to do this transfer, I'm gonna go to a pre-recorded video that I've created here showing that process, just so that we can skip this a little bit faster, get to the actual painting quickly. So you'll see that I'm painting on a 9x12 sized canvas board, and this is a canvas board that you can get the exact one that I'm about to use here from Amazon. There's a link in the description below. I like these. They're a little bit, they come out to about $2 a piece. I think they come in sets of 20 or so. So they're a little bit more expensive. They're twice as expensive as the $1 canvas boards you get at the dollar store, but I think they're more than twice as good. And you can see I'm just going to trace out this outline using some carbon paper. And let's just speed this process up. You see I had to move that carbon paper down a little bit in order to get some of those lower lines like the shoes. And there we go. I also take the tape off and throw that in the garbage, but if you don't want to, I would recycle the outline, or you can use it to test things on. You can give it to someone else in your family to paint or draw on, or you could use it again to create a second, third, 400 versions of today's painting using the free outline on the Dropbox. And again, I provide all the stuff, what you're about to watch, it's all free. If you want to leave a donation, there's a PayPal link in the description below. You can also contribute by an e-transfer or check or a money order. If you want to send by old-fashioned mail, there's a link. You can go to my website and use my email, or join the Facebook group and contact me through there. Another great way that you can help support the group is just by not skipping the ads in front of all of our videos here on YouTube. That's a great way to support myself or any other YouTuber out there. Now, if you're watching the video for the very first time, you've never seen me ever before, like and subscribe to the channel, of course. Because tomorrow we're going to be doing a painting of Bigfoot. Something totally random and different. And that one, I think I'm going to be doing at 10 tomorrow morning, so it's a little bit of a random time. And if you want to catch those random episodes that I do on off days, because usually I'm here on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time, but clearly I like painting, so sometimes I just turn the camera on and start. So hit that notification bell, so you can control how your notifications go. You could possibly get it notified to your phone, I suppose, but I just get it so whenever I open YouTube, a little icon is at the top corner and says, oh, someone you're following is live or just posted a new video, etc. So I've just put down some warm yellow onto this small palette. This is just the exact paint that I'm using here. The reason why I have it in a little tube is this is just whenever I run out of paint here, I cut it open, use a little spatula to scoop it out and put it into a jar so that I'm not just throwing a tube with a bunch of paint in there down the garbage. I can still get a number of other paintings out. This is the only time I ever use water when I'm painting with acrylic. I know people when I teach classes in person, I see people constantly getting some water and dipping it into their acrylic paint. I think because people often learn how to paint by using watercolor, and obviously to activate watercolor you use water, but when we're using acrylic we really don't want to use water at all, except maybe to do what I'm about to do, which is to put a little wash on the painting to get it started. I love using this warm yellow. You could, ideally what you would use would be like a rusty brown, a reddish, warm red brown. And you can buy just a tube of brown paint at your art supply store, but I've made 144 paintings using this very simple palette, a limited series of colors. And we've been able to recreate the Mona Lisa. We've been able to do Dali's Persistence of Time. I mean, all the most famous paintings in human history you can do with 6 colors. So even though the art supply store is going to try to sell you a couple $100 of tubes of paint which you'll never use, I mean, if you're really getting into painting, all those other tubes, they do have a use. But I would strongly recommend, even if you are using other tubes of paint, to really strongly consider using only maybe 6 or 7 different colors in one painting at a time. Because otherwise you're going to have a whole bunch of colors in there. It's like someone who puts way too many spices and flavors in food, right? And you're just like, there's a lot of good stuff in here, but a lot of good stuff doesn't necessarily equal good, right? At some point, it's just too much. And same thing with painting. If we got a whole bunch of colors in there, things just start clashing. Okay, so now we've got this painting started here. And I'm also using the same set of brushes I bought from Michael's Art Supply a year ago. Some of them, you know, again, are falling apart after a whole year of painting. But, you know, that's pretty good, right? Considering these, I bought all of the brushes. I got, I think, 10 of them for $25, two brush sets. And yes, you can easily spend $100 on one brush, and it will be a great brush that you will probably be able to give to your great-grandchildren. But a lot of people, if you're a beginner artist, you're probably thinking, I don't know if I'm willing to invest $100 on a brush when I don't even know if I'm going to be painting a week from now, right? So if you can get a bunch of cheap materials to get started, I think that's a great idea. Okay, so I'm now going to put some paint on my palette here. And let's just take a look at, as I do this, the colors in the painting. You'll see that I generally just put about as much paint on my palette as I'd put toothpaste on my toothbrush. I don't want to put too much extra paint on here, because if I don't use it, then it just goes down the drain, right? Or on a rag and into the garbage. And that's just, for me, a small part of the artist inside me dies when paint just goes to waste. So, oh, that's a lot of blue, but we are going to use a lot of blue. It is, after all, again, the beginning of the blue period, so that's okay if we squeeze a little bit much on there. The difference is, of course, that as, you know, acrylic paint dries when it hits the air, or at least it begins the drying process. So the longer the paint is just sitting there on your palette, being not being used. And actually, I'm just gonna, speaking of these tubes. Let's see if I can squeeze a little bit of paint out of here. Like I say, I love this kind of thing, right? Look at that. This tube, otherwise I wouldn't be able to get any more paint. I think there's still enough in here. I might be able to go another day just with that, right? Or maybe I'll end up cutting it by the end of today's episode. Will we use black today is the question. Maybe, but that dark line also looks very purpley blue. So I'm going to reserve the black until the very end anyway. We're missing some cool yellow, and I'm just going to use right out of the tube here. And if we need more, we'll put more on there. If you want to use the exact paints that I'm using, there is information in the description where you can order the exact ones. If you've already got tubes of paint from a different company, I also wrote down, I think it's in the very first video of my Intro to Painting course, which I did a year ago. It's called, I think, the Art Supply Buyer's Guide, and I show the 6 colors I think you should get from any different major brand of paint, right? So feel free to watch that video. Go out I strongly recommend you get the exact colors I'm using, because sometimes people are like, oh, well, I saw cobalt blue, and cobalt blue is kind of like these colors, and then they start using it, and the colors aren't kind of coming out right, and that's because it's a different color, right? It would be like saying, well, I got the recipe calls for half a cup of sugar, so I put in half a cup of salt. I mean, they're both kind of grainy white things, right? A chef is like, oh my goodness, right? Just because it looks the same doesn't mean it tastes the same, and same thing with paint, right? Good idea to have a little bit of tea while you're painting along. Okay. So, well, that's interesting. Some little metallic pieces. You won't be able to see them on camera, but like, huh, where are those little things coming from? So I'm just gonna blow dry this painting really quickly. It's almost dry, but I want it to be dry so that I can begin painting on it. So I'm gonna mute the microphone for just about 10 seconds. Cool. I see in the chat, Carlito says, Markowsky, got a question. How long will Sharpie take to fade off from a canvas? Well, I would strongly discourage you from using Sharpie on as an art material if you can. Sharpie is not light fast. Sharpie, like as you said, will fade, right? So especially if your painting is anywhere near sunlight, it's going to go from that nice dark black, it's going to go kind of purpley and then green, and it's going to also start to like bleed over time, and it is just not going to look good ultimately. If you want, there's acrylic paint pens, which I've been using more and more frequently lately, which cost not that much more, like maybe $5 for an acrylic paint pen. In fact, I don't know, maybe, well, I was gonna say maybe we'll use it today, but I don't, maybe not. But, you know, acrylic paint pen, these are the Posca, Uni Posca markers. And these are awesome. If you want to make like a nice dark line on top of your painting, I would use this. 100 times out of 100 times on a canvas is you're just going to be, you could do all this great painting, outline it with some Sharpie at the end, and you're going to regret it after, you know, about a year from now. You'll just be like, oh, I'm just going to toss it in the garbage because it's not going to be very good. So, you know, how long will it take to fade? I guess it just depends on how long it's in the sunlight, how much direct light is on it, if there's a curtain, or if, you know, if you keep it in a box in your basement, maybe it'll last for a couple of years before it starts to fade. But it's also, it's not archival. You know, Sharpies are made to write on a Tupperware box. You know, the pizza slices are going to expire on Friday. Don't eat on Saturday or something, right? And your name on the back of your underwear, or maybe if you need to remember who you are every morning. But really not great as an art material. So that would be my recommendation anyway. Okay, looks like Donna's going to be painting with us today. Great, Donna. And Deborah's going to be painting today. Great. And Lori says, I don't know how you paint with those old brushes, Michael. I need some good sharp edges. I must admit, I'm hard on brushes, even though I take good care of them. Maybe my edges are too sharp. I am very rough on my brushes as well. Sometimes you see me scrubbing them. You know, like, you get your brushes, and after a while, they're going to start falling apart. Like a good, is this one? I don't know where, oh, let me see. I think one of these you can really see how it's worn down. Right, so this brush at one point had much more of a square shape. You can see how the edges have just worn off. I think one of the tricks is often using multiple brushes. If you're using the same brush over and over and over and over again all the time, literally for each painting throughout from beginning to end, it's going to wear much longer than if you only use that brush for 5-10 minutes, and then you're rotating and you've got a bunch of different brushes of different sizes. Because if that brush is being used all the time, it's going to wear faster, and it might also just be a little frustrating. I think it might be nice to switch it up, to use different sizes, because if you're using the same brush the whole time, you're going to find that everything just sort of starts to look the same. This is a criticism I used to get when I was in art school. I either used a big brush or a tiny brush, and I remember it just drove my teachers crazy, because they just said, like, everything starts to look the same, and not in a good way. Not that, like, oh, you've got this very distinctive style, but just because something is small doesn't mean you always have to use the tiny brush, and just because something's big doesn't mean you have to use the big brush. So anyway, let's get into the painting. Great questions. I love to answer the questions, and as people will say in the chat, you talk too much. I do talk too much, but I love answering people's questions because I want everyone to get better and better and better. That's the whole point of teaching, right? And me doing these classes. So how do we want to begin here with this painting? Well, as typical with what I normally do is I start with the background. So we'll probably start with this purpley blue back here and the green. And then I go to the foreground, and I'll start painting the figure and the ball. And then I'll go back and try to finish the background as much as possible. And then we'll come back to the figure in the foreground and finish the figure in the foreground. And that ideally should mean the painting's done. It will. I'll tell you off the top of my head what I imagine we might do. A kind of a darker glaze over top of some, just to kind of dirty and muddy up that color, and that as probably our very final brush stroke. And I'm anticipating today's painting will take us about 3 hours long. So after about an hour from now, we should be done the initial first layer in the foreground and background, and then we'll spend probably another half an hour finishing the background, and then the remainder hour and a half on the figure in the foreground. So again, you can always just jump to the very end if you're watching this video after it's been recorded. Tell me, see what it looks like, and if you decide you want to continue or you want to go back to the beginning, then you're welcome to do that. Okay, so let's do the background. Now the background, as we talked about in the previous episode, Picasso is starting to really play with the color here. And this is a fairly warm background. This is a really nice, beautiful purple. So it begs the question, I think the way that I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to, because Picasso's very famous for doing many layers of paint. And because I think first of all, he learned how to paint from his father beginning at age 7. His father was a well-known art teacher and artist himself. We looked at the painting of the dove that he did right off the top. And one of the classical techniques of painting is layering colors, which is similar to what we do in each episode. So we can see that there's multiple colors underneath this final purple. I mean, it's hard to say because this image is a little pixelated, but it does look like the purples might be one of the final layers. And we've got some cool blue and cool yellow, cool green sneaking through here. So my plan, I think I'm going to use the cool colors in the background, warm colors in the foreground, and then if we need to invert them afterwards, we'll do that just like we did yesterday. So to get this initial color, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a cool blue with some white in the sky. And I know this is going to drive people crazy. People who are just tuning in for a moment are going to look at this and they are going to lose their minds and they won't know what on earth I'm doing. And that's okay because you know, this sort of rewards anyone who's actually going to bother to pay attention and to watch the actual step-by-step instructions to do this painting. So I'm going to paint this cool blue as a foundational layer here. You can see I'm also using a nice big brush. And I'm not too worried about making these lines pretty. I don't care if my brush strokes are coming through at all. That's kind of irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. It's just I want to get a cool color in the background. Then when we paint the warm blue over top of this, I think, or the warm kind of purpley color over top of this, it's still gonna sort of behave a little bit more like a cool color and visually recede into the background. So I keep having to mix more of this color because I didn't mix enough to start off with. And the color might vary a little bit as I do that because I'm mixing it a number of times. But just remember that this color is going to get painted over completely. And because of that, any sort of little inconsistencies are going to be largely irrelevant. All right, see this big paintbrush? No fiddling allowed, right? No fiddling for the first hour of this painting. Just get the color in there. Even if it's the wrong color, even if you make some mistakes, don't worry about it. Mistakes are, like Bob Ross is saying, you know, these happy accidents, they're opportunities. Okay, that's cool. So now let's, I'm just gonna wipe this excess paint off. If we look at the down below here, now what color is that? It almost looks like the same color as the sky. A bit of this purple. We can even see it coming through the dress, and that actually surprises me a lot. Because it makes me think, what do I want to do here? If that's what he's... You know, now that I'm looking at this, oh, great. Spinning beach ball. Okay, well, while that's spinning, okay, or finally, of course, you know what that makes me think is, it makes me think that what Picasso did is paint this entire background blue, and then painted it purple, and then only later on, perhaps one of the very final things that he did was to actually draw a horizon line in here and then put this lime green over top of it. So the question therefore becomes, because, you know, Picasso's rearranging things as he's painting them, he's working quickly. So the question is, do we want to paint the painting in literally the exact same step-by-step process that he used, or is it okay if we do something a little bit different, you know, at this stage here? Is it okay if rather than painting blue and then painting purple and then just painting green here, which is what he did, is it okay if I just go in and start painting a different color here? And I think I will. So what I think I'm going to do here, which may mean a slightly different color by the time of the end of the painting, is that I'm going to paint this a warmer color, or maybe not. This is driving me nuts. Okay, I think, man, this goes like yesterday. If you watched yesterday's episode, I ran into a similar sort of situation where I was trying to think aloud how I want to do this. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to paint this purple down here. And I'm also going to paint this purple. And then we're going to paint the green over top. Okay, so bear with me here, because I'm just trying to, well, because I do want to show you that we can do exactly what Picasso did, but it's just a little bit more time consuming. So I'm just going to cut a little bit of something out that won't be visible later. Okay, so let's mix the purple that he used in the sky, and that purple is made by using our cool red and our warm blue. So let's mix that. Okay, and we're going to need some white as well. We're going to end up using a lot of this, so might as well just mix a bigger batch here. Okay, take a bunch of this white. I don't think I'll use all of that. Okay. So just imagine that there was blue all the way down here. I'm going to put this purple here, at least initially. And we do have a little bit more room on our canvas because we're painting on a slightly larger size, so Okay. So I know that anyone who's not paying attention looks up and sees today's painting and goes like, wow, this guy is clearly colorblind. What on earth is he thinking or smoking or drinking? Because that's not what the painting looks like at all. And even though I'm here completely sober and painting today's painting, I may or may not be mentally stable, but I think it's helpful to understand. I think this is a great example. You know, unintentionally, I didn't think of it, but this is a great example of how a painting changes dramatically from the beginning until the end, right? Because in order to make this painting look like the final version, we could skip right over. We could paint that purple right there. We could skip over this blue. And we could skip over this purple. For that matter, we could skip over the yellow I put down there as well. And we would get a painting that might look 70% like the original. But you might just be like, I guess I just can't mix my colors properly. They're just not turning out the way I wanted. Maybe it's my paintbrushes. I got bad paintbrushes, or maybe it's the tubes of paint. I guess I'm using these cheap student grade paints. I probably should be using much more expensive paints. That would really help. None of those reasons would account for why it doesn't turn out exactly right, because a big part of painting is the optical mixing of color. So now we just mixed a purple, right? We mixed the paint together to create purple. That's one way to create colors and to change colors on a painting. Another way of doing it is by applying layers of color, right? And then they mix optically in our mind, right? Rather than on the canvas or on the palette itself. Okay. So the next step, should we do the... I'm wondering... I think I'm going to paint the figure here, and we'll just let people come and go into the video and just laugh at how badly we're doing. And then we'll come back to this background. And, you know, I could do it right now, but I think it might be just kind of fun to see the painting radically change in about 30 minutes from now. So, all of those people that don't have the patience and just go right to the very end, they're going to wonder how we got to this place, right? So let's go to the foreground now. We're going to start mixing some warmer colors, although this color is definitely a cool blue, right? The color in the child's clothing is very similar to this color. Having said that, if we look down here, come on. You know, we see this purple underneath here. We see the purple underneath right in this area here. We see purple coming through in and around here in the hands. We even see some purple underneath the face. I mean, so, gosh, all of that is very interesting, because how do we want to do that part of the painting? That is the question. I suppose we could put purple all over the entire... We could just paint this entire figure purple. Even the ball, as I'm looking at the ball, has got purple under it as well. Yeah, it does look like there's maybe, although there could be yellow. Okay, well, okay. So I think all of this is super interesting. Maybe it's a little bit too geeky for a lot of people. I don't know. What I want to do while I'm thinking about this, I'm going to start putting some guidelines down for myself. I'm going to take my cold blue and my warm red, mixing together this dark color. And I'm going to use that dark color to do a little bit of fine outlining. So let's take this, and how about we'll zoom right in. And very quickly do some very simple outlining of shapes here. So that, because I think I will do, I'm going to put a little bit of this purple underneath the surface. Just exactly like Picasso did here. But that risks losing some details, so. Oh, shoot. Realized I did that whole thing without being, while I was super zoomed in, right? That's frustrating, but anyway, so I just did that whole thing around. Okay, so now we've got some lines there that will hopefully stay there as we do a subsequent layer. I'm going to blow dry all of this really quickly here. So I'm going to mute the microphone for about 20. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take some of this purple, I'm going to put a little bit of glaze into it, just so to make it a little bit more transparent, so that we don't lose too many lines on here. And so I'm just going to take some glaze. I'm using satin glazing liquid, right? This is an acrylic medium that you can use to mix into your paint. If you don't have glazing fluid, I would strongly recommend you get it. You can see maybe 2 out of every, maybe even 3 out of every 4 paintings we do in this series uses glazing fluid. It's just such a handy tool that I think 99% of the time when people are adding water to their paint, what they're really hoping for is to get the effect that a glazing fluid does, and it's made for that purpose, right? So I'm going to take a bit of this glazing fluid. I'm going to get it on my brush here like this. So I get lots of it on there. And then I'm going to just steal some of this purple. So this is going to allow me to do like a thin layer of paint. It's going to have a bit of this purpley quality. Now, if I wasn't on camera doing this, I would probably just take this purple and just the same purple I did here and paint over top of it. But I'm just a little bit afraid that we might lose too much details, and then the majority of people watching are going to go like, what on earth? I can't see anything. This one's going in the garbage, right? I don't want that to happen. So you can see the difference here by adding this glazing fluid to the exact same purple. This is the effect we get. And so this is going to help us get that little bit of that weird purple that seems to be kind of coming through in a few places in this painting. Now the thing is, by diluting it with the glazing fluid, we won't get quite that nice purple that he had kind of showing through. But maybe, I mean, we could do another layer of this. I mean, maybe I'll just take a little bit more purple to glazing fluid ratio down here. So I mean, I think that's cool. It's definitely it's weird, and I know some people saying, well, I just want to paint the painting as it is, and that's fine, right? You could just try to mix the colors as you see them. Part of the whole idea of doing the Master Study series for me is trying to paint, you know, learning what he did. How did he get the effects that he got in the painting? How can we recreate this painting as authentically as possible? Given, you know, obviously with we're not painting in oil paint, and so there's some restrictions obviously that are going to create a different painting. But I'm really interested in seeing, like, just as on a personal level, like how this painting would change. You know, I obviously have done 140 other paintings. I could do this much faster without having done these weird colors that, again, I guarantee you he's using. So this is, yeah, it's fun. Anyway, so that... I am tempted to now do a second layer of this purple glaze. So I'm going to do that. Let's just... I'm halfway down the river. I might as well go over the falls, right? Let's... Okay, I'm going to... Okay, so I'm just going to do this a second time here. So let's take this purple glazing fluid. I might even add a little bit more purple than I did last time. Last layer was really transparent, so maybe let's just make it a bit more transparent. Or less, a bit more opaque, I mean. That's cool. Yes. Right, so this painting is the beginning of like a major chapter in Picasso's life. So it doesn't surprise me that he's doing a lot, like playing with the materials. Like he's 20 years old when he makes this painting, and he's already like a master at the technical aspects of painting. His father was a great artist, taught him everything he knew. There's some people, like, by the legend goes that he was so good that Picasso's father stopped painting afterwards. That's a lie, because there are paintings that exist by Picasso's father that were made after this date and time. But nevertheless, the idea is that Picasso was like incredibly accomplished. He was a great fast learner, and like a lot of young people, was just like, you know what, they keep telling me that this is the way paintings are supposed to be done. Well, screw them. I'm gonna make paintings the way I want to make paintings. What would happen if I did this? And then he's like, well, that's kind of weird. No one's ever really painted purple on a figure and then tried to paint the figure back over top, so that's great. I'm going to do that. Right? And therefore, this is how we get today's painting. Lolly says, I'm loving this Picasso series. That glazing fluid is a godsend for some of these paintings, isn't it? I want to get some, but until I do, are there any good alternatives or techniques to recreate similar effects, or do I just need to go and get some glazing fluid for myself? If you don't have glazing fluid, an alternative that would work would be just matte medium. So like matte medium works really well. I mean, obviously it's not the same. It is basically, matte medium is just clear paint. It's exactly what's in all of these tubes of paint. The only difference is that there's no pigment in it. And I have done some. I've done a little bit of glazing with the matte medium just to see if it worked. Somebody watching probably would remember better than I do. I don't remember what episode that was. It was a while ago, because I did it just sort of as like, well, let's just see. I've never done it. And it was kind of like, well, yeah, it does the job. It's sort of like nailing a hammer in with a screwdriver, or nailing a nail in without a hammer. If you don't have one with a screwdriver, you can do it. It's just, it would drive you a little bit nuts. So you can do it, but it would certainly, again, you could order glazing fluid online. There's lots of, like, you could look this up. This is Golden brand satin glazing fluid, and I'm sure you could have it delivered by tomorrow afternoon, depending on how much you're willing to pay for it. Okay, so I think that maybe should we do the background here, now that we've been playing around with purple and glazes. Let's see how close. We're not too far off with this color, so let's mix more of it. I need some more cool red. And again, I'm just going to put a bit of glazing fluid in there. That's going to give me just a little bit of transparency. Very small amount. Just so I don't lose this blue entirely here. So I'm going to quickly paint over everything, and I don't mind if it's looks a little bit brushy, because his looked a little brushy as well. Alright, if I didn't put any glazing fluid in here, I'd probably end up just covering up that blue entirely, and then it sort of is like, well, kind of defeats a bit of the purpose, doesn't it? Of having put that blue down there to begin with. Now, as we get in here, I think I'm just going to put some glazing fluid off to the side. Just I'm still painting with this purple, but being a little bit I wanted a bit more of that transparency. Cool. Got a bit of that. So now we're going back into the background is essentially what I'm doing here. Now let's do this the green here. Although, yeah, I think I might be, well, I think I want a bit more purple right here. Okay. Maybe a bit more purple, right? Just before I clean this brush off. Okay, cool. So it's still not quite there yet because I'm going to put a darker glaze over the top. Now let's go to this green down there. That's a crazy green. That looks to me, let's just start making it and we'll see how close we can get. It looks to me like we've got some cool blue. Definitely cool yellow. Let's mix it together. Looks like we need a lot more cool yellow, so let's just... So I think it's a lot like this. It's going to change. Now when I put this color is not going to be super opaque. So when I paint it over this purple, it's going to look a little bit streaky, which is okay, but just so we expect that to happen, right? To the point where, in fact, we kind of want to emphasize a bit of that streakiness, right? It's like I don't want it to be too perfect. So, if anything, I might just take a rag and just come here and just try to kind of wipe. I gotta be kind of, I went a little too far. So that's okay. We'll see. Let's come over here. All right, and he's definitely he wipes that off around there. Okay. Pretty close, right? It's going to come back over here. This is much more, this is brighter and more solid over here. Right, it is a little tricky because that paint is trying to dry, and I'm painting new wet paint over top of it, and it's sort of taking that top coat of paint away, and it's so this is it's not like a perfect science here, right? Which is fine, right? Okay, I think that's not bad. I do see a bit of that color up here, so I think again I'm going to take a bit of glazing fluid. Let's get a bit of this paint on here. And then maybe try to just wipe a bit away. Right, it's causing some problems because it's wiping a little bit of the blue away as well. I expect that to happen. I'm going to put a bit of this over here. We're going to put some darker black glaze later, but I think what he did is he painted this color in a few different places and then either wiped it off or painted some other blue stuff over top of it. Or you can see where literally my paintbrush just lifted that color up. Does it drive me nuts? Yeah, it kind of drives me a bit nuts, but what are you going to do about it, right? Let's see if we can just touch that up with a bit more purple. And this might explain why some of this painting looks that way. I mean, he's painting with oil paint, so it's not going to have that same problem happening here. But, Okay. Cool. Lolly says, an all-purple Picasso. That's different. Heidi says, hi everyone, this is perhaps my fave among all the Picasso works this week. I have a sense I'm not alone, no grandkids, but I've yet to finish my Spirit of India and some works, and some work with tight deadlines. You better get your work in, Heidi, because, I don't know, for this class, all of this is due by 8 o'clock tonight, no excuses. Deborah says, just drop the kids off at home and we'll continue watching. Too tired to paint now, so I'll start afresh tomorrow. I love this painting. Cool. You know, so this green that we just put in here, that's probably going to fade a little bit over the course of today's episode as it dries. So I'm expecting potentially having to add a little bit more, even maybe a bit of white into this green as it goes. Right now it's got this very weird electric quality. But I don't want to do anything more, neither to the background or to the grass down here, which, you know, is maybe foreground or middle ground, depending on how you want to think about it, until I've got this figure begun here, or the next step ready here. So I think I'm just going to start working my way down from the top. Let's maybe, yeah, let's do the hair and the skin. And then we'll do the dove and her clothing. And then we'll maybe, I don't want to forget about this ball as we go here either. Okay, so the hair is going to be a warm brown. So this warm brown, let's take some warm red. And some warm yellow. Do you notice how, like, I don't mix it all together, how I just take my paint and I add a little bit here. The reason why I add this here is now I don't have to go back and keep muddying up the original color. I've got it set to the side. You got this green. Take a bit of warm blue now. Pull this in. Okay. I think we're almost there. Just a little bit more red. I think that's pretty close. Again, it'll look different here than it will on here, right? Because now all of these, the purple and the yellow are going to mix with this color in our eyes. So I just want to, we have no idea until we paint it what it's actually going to look like. It's a little bit more orangey than I was even expecting. I made it a little bit lighter because I was worried that it would go too dark. So let's put a bit more blue in here. The other thing that is very tricky is that he outlined everything with black. And that can tend to make the color look either a little bit brighter or darker. So I'm just going to leave that for right now. I might want to brighten it up later, but I think it's okay just as it is. I'm going to paint this with this color I just put down here. Now I know I want it to be more of a red, but look how that's not too far off. Right, that's pretty darn close to that actual red down there. So it gives you an idea that while it might not be the exact right color for this, it's pretty close to this color down here. Now I think he did put actually the warm red underneath it and then painted this color over top, but you know, what are you gonna do? So I'm just gonna take this warm yellow and just mix it with the color I just have on my brush right now without diluting or changing it. I don't know what that was. There was like a blob of water or something I got from somewhere. So when I touched it, it just soaked all of the paint, including my yellow layer, all the way back down to the white. It's not such a problem because I'm about to paint white there a little bit in a short bit, but regardless, it's there. I'm just going to take my paint, this dark color that I mixed to do my outlines, I'm just going to take it right here, mix my color into it. This is going to be a darker color eventually, but I'm just going to paint this here for now. Okay. So, should I try just darkening this brown a third time? That's actually pretty close. I think that'll be, if I just leave that, I think it's, when I paint that black around there, I think that will be the exact color I need. Okay, where should we go next? Let's do the flesh tones, or tone. Wash that brush. Okay, love the chat. You guys are cracking me up. Okay, so actually, maybe before I put the white in here, I'm just gonna mix a skin tone, and maybe I should just, let's go back before I, okay. So to mix a skin tone, what we want to do is we want to make like an orange color. So let's take some white. All right, we would want to make like a brown for, but ultimately, but let's start with an orange. Once again, we're going to take a bit of blue. All right, it's the same sort of thing here. I just wanted to mix it again just because this is an important part of the painting, so I don't want to just skip over it. Okay, so we got this kind of orangey color. Let's take some white. Let's mix it over here. And you see how it just goes kind of peachy? I mean, we're pretty close. I mean, maybe it needs a bit more white. If it's too red, then that means you might need a little bit more yellow or blue. If it's too blue or too greenish, then there's too much blue and yellow, and maybe just add a little bit more red. But I think that's pretty close. But we'll find out here momentarily. Yeah, I think we're on the right track. Now, I could have maybe painted these lines on the face again. So what's interesting, it almost looks like he's painting all of these lines diagonally. Is it just me, or does anybody else see that? let's zoom in. It looks a little bit like a mime or something, right? Marcel Marceau. So the reason I sort of just painted it the way I just did, is when I look at this, it looks to me like there's these diagonal brush strokes going through here. So I wanted to kind of try to capture a little bit of that. I'm not sure how well I did, but now I'm going to take a bit of glazing fluid and just mix this onto my brush here. Like maybe I could have done that there as well. So I'm just kind of cleaning that up a bit. Okay. And let's come to the hands here. So there's some weird coloring going on in the hands. That's why I added a bit of this glazing fluid to this color and to the flesh tone, in the hopes of maybe some of these colors coming through. I mean, there's some yellow there, reds, blues. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell from this is a fairly low resolution image. So let's I'm going to let this dry. Maybe even I might blow dry this whole painting actually just before I go on, because there's this little dab. See, I get impatient and I want to try to fix things. Sometimes you just got to let that acrylic dry for literally 2 minutes, but sometimes I don't have the patience for that. So I'm going to blow dry it and then... So, as promised, I just want to go in. Actually, let's zoom in. Okay, maybe just before I go on, I'm gonna just see if I can simulate a little bit of this weird rainbow thing going on in the fingers here. So it looks like there's a bit of yellow. So I'm taking a bit of cool yellow. Just a little tiny hint of it. Okay. I'm going to take a little bit of warm red. And I think I'm just going to add a dab of glazing fluid because otherwise it'll be too bright. But a little bit of color here. Eventually we'll do that mouth, just put it there as a placeholder. Oh, you know what? While I've got red on my brush, remember this ball I was talking about down here? Why don't we just add a bit of this warm red? Glaze. So that was warm red out of the tube, and then here's a bit of warm red glazing. It's almost like he's gone over the line here a bit. So let's get that little bit of a fuzzy quality. Okay, super specific, but why not, right? So, I think next, let's put some white paint on this dove. And I think I'm gonna actually add a tiny bit of cool blue first. And this is going to be basically, in fact, maybe it's worth just taking this white and then let's get a tiny bit of cool blue on here. So I put a little bit of that cool blue in there just to give this white a bit of character. And I think I'm probably going to be doing a little bit of, I'll add a bit more white on it again. But then, but maybe I won't go over every little detail. So we'll have a bit of this color kind of coming through. Okay. And also I'm being a little bit sloppy because I know I'm going to put an outline around everything, so I'm not super concerned about making it perfect. So now let's take more of the cold blue, mix it in with the white. So I'm just seeing what is the right ratio. I think it's somewhere around here. It also looks like there's actually a little bit of cold yellow in here, making it a bit more of a tiny, oops, that was a lot too much maybe. It has a bit more of a teal quality that's not maybe immediately visible. And I was about to use my big brush for this, but I see the way he's painted it. He's using smaller brush strokes. Actually, you know what? I'm going to paint this in with a larger brush, and then I'm going to go around and go over top of it afterwards. We'll do this first. Okay. Let's get a bit more white and blue and yellow. Just a bit more yellow in there, very subtle amount to get it back to the teal color. Here we go. Okay, I need to make another batch of this before I go further here. Actually, just as I'm painting this, I'm realizing maybe, you know what, I'm just going to take my rag and kind of just go back over here. Let's go up here. white. A bit more yellow coming in here. I'm kind of also scrubbing a bit there. Maybe you see. And I'm gonna leave a. I'm not gonna go right up to the edge because I want some of that to be seen here, just as Picasso did, right? Take my rag. So this kind of thing, wiping things with a rag, is very common with oil paint. Oil painters do this kind of thing all the time. Or, well, some oil painters do. I don't know about all of them, but a lot of them do. I used to do this a lot to just get different effects, to get almost like a little kind of a glaze effect a bit sometimes. Let's put a bit more white in here. Let's take a bit of this yellow. So I'm going to take this paint without mixing it up entirely on my brush, which is a little scary because you don't know exactly what's going to happen. Just go back in here and kind of dab things a bit. Oops. And throw the rag on there for good measure every once in a while. Let's get maybe a bit more yellow. Make this much more of a green. So I have to be very, like, I'm barely touching the surface here, because when I touch too hard, I pretty much scrape everything off. Right? So one thing you could do is just let it dry a little bit before you start doing this. But one of the things that is nice is by using this paint, and I'm doing it while I've got all of this wet on wet paint, I'm just going to get a different effect than I would than if I just let it dry. So there's pros and cons. I mean, why not play around a little bit in a painting like this where this is really how he did it. I mean, it looks like he just played around in this area for a while. Like, one of the things Picasso is known for is for making paintings, like tons and tons of paintings, and then painting on them years later. Very famously, the Les Mademoiselles d'Avignon, which is sort of acknowledged as the kind of the first cubist piece, and we will paint that painting, I think, in February. It's an anniversary of the when he actually worked on that painting, which is why we'll do it in February. He painted on it and on and off for years, and then when it was finished, he didn't even exhibit it for about 5 or 6 years afterwards. So Cubism could have begun 5 or 6 years before it did, but it was so weird and so different that he had its back or face to the wall for half a decade before, and people would occasionally see it, and there were rumors of this really weird painting he was working on. And yeah, it's until he felt kind of ready to exhibit it. Anyway, we'll talk about all that when we get to that specific painting, but I do just think it's kind of interesting to mention here. Taking a little bit of blue, and then just sort of dab a bit. Might go a little bit more green. Okay, I guess I should have left a bit more purple under here, shouldn't I? I mean, hey, let's see if we can get a bit of that purple to come back. I'm just going to take my water here, get my rag a little bit wet, and we'll see if we can scrub some paint back out. Yeah, see, it's just going to go white. So I'm just going to take a bit of this purple. And paint it quickly back in here. Okay, I'm going to come back up to these sleeves here now. And just give a bit more nuance. This is just my cold blue, and I'm coming in just adding a little flashes of something something. I think that's actually a warm blue that's making an appearance here, so maybe I'll just take a tiny bit of warm blue. Bit of this warm blue. Okay, so let's now take a look and see where we're at. So we're getting very close. Like, I mean, really, I want to do some outlining. Oh, you know, I was going to mix a white here, but I kind of like this blue that we've got on the brush right now. Let's see. Just a little bit more white. In fact, almost a bit too much white there, hey? So I'm going to just take some of it away. Go back to my other colors here. Right, it's almost, I could go even more cool blue on that area. Okay. Heidi says, Picasso's color schemes are complex looking when I look closely at this one and yesterday's. Deborah says, I know, both have intrigued me and I hope to paint them both soon. I think, you know, as Picasso gets a little bit older and he has more money and he's able to afford more and more canvases, there's less and less of the layering that we see in these early paintings. Obviously, at this point, he's close to the edge of poverty and he's making paintings just to survive. And when because he's now living in, I think this painting was made when he first got to Paris. And Casamagas and him, his best friend who moved from Barcelona. Again, we talked yesterday about the horrible way in which Casamagas shot himself and the woman that he loved that had rejected him. Casamagas got all of their friends together for dinner in a fancy restaurant, proposed marriage to this woman. She rejected him. She didn't want anything to do with him anyway before that, and so he took out his gun and shot her and then shot himself. Picasso wasn't there. I thought he was there, but I remember now that he wasn't there. But obviously it was a horrible, traumatic moment, not just for Picasso, but for all those people, and people didn't even know them that were in the restaurant, obviously, right? And why am I telling that story? I don't know, lost my train of thought. So let's move on to, I think really, what have we left to do here but our outlines, right? So I think we'll be done within a good amount of time. Now, you could use an acrylic paint pen to do this, to do all the black outlines, and I think it would work pretty well. I am, however, going to just use the paint on my palette. I'm not even going to use... I'm not going to use black, I don't think. Well, we'll see, but I don't think I'll need it. So the two colors that I'm going to use primarily are my cold blue and warm red. So let's just get a bit more cold blue on here. Whoa. Man, I didn't realize how... I thought I was almost out of this paint. Remember, I used the... In fact, I'm going to take a bit of this back and put it into this tube because I just squeezed way too much out here. I didn't think there was that much left. Right? Otherwise, a few years ago, I was just throwing that whole tube into the garbage because I would have thought it was empty, but there's still quite a lot of paint left in there. So, I think I got a little... So I'm going to take my warm red, my cold blue, we'll mix these together. And it gets a really nice dark color precisely because they're almost opposite one another on the color wheel. So when colors cross through the color wheel, they lose their intensity. I'm just adding a bit of cold yellow. That's going to just take even more of the color out, right? Because we had these two colors going across the color wheel. Just as a reminder, so we just took our warm red and our cool blue, mixed them together, and they're approaching the neutral core. We add a bit of cold yellow, and it's just like as if there's this is an elastic band, and it just pulls that line right up in neutral. So much so, if we add a little bit of white to this, it goes gray instantly. We are going to use this later for glazing as well. Whew, okay, we're about to move into the final stretch here. This is like a baseball game. We're going into the bottom of the 9th, tied game. Runner on second. I'm sure that probably most people watching this don't know anything about or care about sports. Probably know something about sports, could care less. There is a Dodgers game on. Maybe it's over already. I'm a Dodgers fan because I lived in Los Angeles for so many years. Don't tell me the ending. I'm going to watch the game after this. But well, hopefully they win. Okay. You know what? Well, I think most of this is dry. I think let's go right up to the top. Let's start at the face, work our way down, because I think that might make a bunch of people more calm if they see the painting kind of resolved in this area. So, and I may even jump to my own outline if I need a little bit of help in this area, because I did that I did the outline to help myself, so I can use it as well for this type of activity. Okay. So I'm going to start here outlining the head. Remember, I'm not using black at all. Another reason, again, I don't like using black if possible because it's such a dominant color. And I haven't used black anywhere else in the painting, right? So if all of a sudden I just break out a color right at the very end of the painting and start painting all over the place, of course it's going to look strange. Of course. I mean, it would almost be bizarre if it didn't kind of create some kind of weird effect, right? I gotta work on that outline a second. I think I'm gonna come back to it after I've done a little bit more on this face. Okay. Let's get this ear. this image looks, on the left on the computer screen, is out of focus, and looking at it makes my eyes crossed a bit. It's such a kind of bizarre thing, right? Every time I look up and look at it, I'm like, what? Oh my goodness, it's... Okay, now I'm going to use a bit of purple instead of black for the eyebrows. So I'm going to use this purple here, maybe even adding a little bit of white to it. Now ideally, if I was on the top of it, I would have just left this little bit area come through there a bit, but I wasn't on top of it enough. Could be a little bit more magenta, right? Let's get a bit more cool red in that purple. I think I'm gonna probably reduce the intensity of that line shortly, but not just yet. So I think that's okay for this exact second. While I'm here, let's get some warm red, maybe a bit of white. Just made that a little bit big. But we'll come in and do a bit of touching up, so I'm not going to focus too much on getting it perfect. I'm going to go back to this, my dark color. And kind of taper Now I do like, I kind of like the look. Like on camera, I like the way that eye looks. In person, that looks a little dark for my taste. So I want to lighten that area up. I'm going to take a bit of white, maybe even a bit of my dark color or flesh tone. Because I don't want just pure white in here, otherwise it's just going to be too strong. Let's just take this is my flesh tone, same one that I painted the face with, so I'm just coming back in, and I felt kind of like those lips might be a little bit too big. Okay. Now, actually, I'm going to outline this arm first. I do a little bit more work on those lips shortly, but let's just... Sometimes you get into an area, it's like, you know what, okay, that's turned out pretty good. I need to just take a second, take a break, and move on to another area. And then just otherwise, I just find that I just start obsessing over little things, and I just need a reminder that there's more to the painting than just the face, right? So I'm working on the body before I do the dove, because these hands are on top of the dove, and I want to make sure that these hands are just nowhere to hide them. They're right out front. So let's take care of this first. Again, I've done this a little bit differently, haven't I? Okay, now I'm going to come and do this dove. This area here, this little dark area, it's some sort of like a I don't know what it is. It's like a elastic or a belt or like a cummerbund kind of thing. I don't know what, but anyway. I'm gonna move on to this area here. Now that way I don't have to worry about getting my hand over any wet paint. So you know, I can see that I shaped this area differently than he did. That's okay. So these are some bird feathers. This is the tail of the dove. So in an interest to just like he's doing, kind of just gave it a little bit of less of a straight line there. I think I'm just going to put 2 rows. why I did such a big wide line here, but just gonna wipe part of that away and do it again, maybe less wide. There we go. So that's the very bottom of the painting there on the left. I do have a little bit of extra space, so he's obviously not concerned about making this ball perfectly round and circular, and therefore neither should you be so worried about that. If yours turns out a bit wonky, that is perfectly fine. And if anyone says, wow, that's a wonky ball, say, well, that's the way Picasso did it, and if it's good enough for Picasso, it's good enough for me. I'm debating, do I want to do any, any other lines on here? I'm going to paint this one triangular area this darker color. That's it. I don't think I'm going to do much more to that. Okay, wow, we're getting close. We're getting close. And you can see I'm allowing for this roughness to come through. That's why I didn't paint that paint all the way down to the edge. Maybe we'll come back. Let's do these shoes first. I think that's what's going on these shoes. It's so hard to tell because they're so blurry. They could be a little bit more green, but you know, I don't know. I'm kind of happy with it. So I think I'm going to deliberately go, well, I was going to say deliberately go further to the right, but Okay. So let's bring it back out and just let's, you know, we can, like, my main question to myself is, you know, the face of the child, this nose. Do I like that or not? Do I want to hide that nose? This little line? Maybe I'll glaze over it very lightly and just make it a little bit more subtle. Okay, so I have the skin tone, and this is some area that I had used as glaze anyway from earlier, so it's a much more transparent. So maybe I'll just take that and let's just quickly go in and paint over that part of the nose. Maybe even these eyebrows, just lighten them up ever so slightly so that they're not so bright. Maybe I'm gonna get a bit more paint on there. I think I need to blow dry this. I'm just going to mute the microphone. Hard to say. I mean, I probably won't know unless I compare the video from a moment ago to just now. Because we can see that nose is barely visible, or at least the bridge of the nose anyway, right? I'm gonna take some little bit more purple, maybe a little bit more darker purple. Oops. So sorry, I just took a bit of this, the one I just used for outlines. I'm gonna mix this together. Also, I want to do something similar with the red. So I'm just taking, whoa, back and forth. Here's my red. I got a little bit of this glaze. A little bit of a darker red. Where's my white? That's... I don't know. I might have been happier with the nose before I just went in there and did a little work. It definitely looked different than the original, but I don't know if I thought it was necessarily worse. I think that's okay. Again, let's if we... Because I think I'm... Oh, you know what I want to do? I just want to do a little bit more glazing in the background. So let's... I think we're about 5 minutes from being done here. Let's zoom out just a bit more. Because now what I want to do... Taking some glazing fluid in my dark line. Okay. So, last thing I'm going to do, and it's a little dangerous doing something at the very end, but let's take some glazing fluid. I'm going to go for a larger brush just to speed this up. Let's get some, just the glazing fluid all by itself on my brush. And then some of the dark color on here. The darkest color. We'll see. I'm not putting too much on because we can always make it darker, but making it lighter will be a little tricky. Yeah, I need a bit more than that. So you could decide how hardcore you want to go with glaze. This is a way if you want to kind of just muddy things up a little bit like the way that he did. I just noticed there's that line in the horizon. We'll get that shortly. You can take another brush just to kind of soften some of that out a little bit if you want. No, I think I might be okay walking away from it. He's got actually, well, there's a little bit in the hair, I think. What do you think? Am I am I done here? Oh, I was going to do that little bit of that tiny little outline on the horizon. Oh, good, thank you. Well, I just saw your comment about don't forget the outline on the hill. I mean, I could darken this in a little bit more. Maybe I'm just gonna give a little shadow here. He didn't really do that, but I think it might just be a nice little touch because these shoes are coming out from underneath this outfit, so. I do feel compelled to put a little shadow around here somewhere. It's not there, but one thing that I don't really like figures just floating around in space, so I felt like I just needed to put that. Okay. I think that is good enough for government work, as my grandfather always used to say. I do feel like maybe having those purple eyebrows, I kind of think I want to bring it back, honestly. So give me a second. I know I was about to finish, but because I know they're not in the original, but I'm gonna take a bit of purple. Oops. Mostly dried up, so I'm just trying to find a bit. Again, I know this isn't in the original, but I just feel compelled to make this little tiny, virtually insignificant change, because I think I liked it before, even though it's not there again. I think it has a use. You can certainly paint your painting however you like, but hopefully this might give you a little bit of permission to create it the way that you want it to be. Yeah, personally, I prefer that. I'm happy with that. I feel like that's a slight improvement. I felt like I needed to do that. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Let's just take a quick look at what we've got coming up in the next couple of days. So, on Thursday, we are going to be painting this painting. An Acrobat and Young Harlequin, because we're going to leave the blue period, the sadness and the struggle, the loneliness of 1901 to 1904, and we're going to move into the rose period, a much more positive time in Picasso's life. He's now sort of back on track. He's had this kind of depression period, and he starts painting some of these clowns, harlequins, dancers. He's doing some backdrops for some of the Sergei Digilev's plays, and it's a much more, again, just much more positive time. So I'm looking forward to painting some of these. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock Pacific time, I'm going to do a special episode. We are going to paint Bigfoot. I'm super excited. I've been doing all the research on this over the past few weeks, and I'm super excited. We'll talk about Bigfoot tomorrow. Yeah, something completely different. If you thought like you had enough of Picasso, here's Saturday. We're going to be painting that, and this is what's happening on Monday. So please like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. You want to contribute a PayPal donation, I'd be very grateful to receive even just $1 to help keep the show up and running and maintain all of this equipment, buying new paints, etc. You can send a PayPal check or e-transfer I'd love to have anything that you might want to contribute to the show, or just don't skip the ads before and after a YouTuber's videos. That's pretty easy to do as well. Okay, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will see you again bright and early tomorrow morning. Good night, everyone. Have a great night. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.